my apologies. I ended up in a completely different stream that I was doing and didn't realize it until now, but things happen. This is the first time I'm doing this, so welcome to my live stream, and I'm obviously a newbie. Hi, Cam. How are you? My friend Michelle was over in my other stream, so hopefully she's going to jump in another point in time. I will admit wholeheartedly that it might be hard for me to get back to people in the chat for a little bit, only because I'm kind of going to be multitasking while we do this topic of discussion. So I guess I'll wait for a few more people. Sorry, you're going to get the spins with me today. Okay, give me 1 second. All right, so hi, how are you guys? It's been a rough day here at the shop, so I'm just going to apologize in advance. Mondays and Tuesdays, I am closed at the shop. Unfortunately, there's always something going on. Mondays, I start my cleanup, I start my water changes, I start taking dry goods deliveries, sometimes also live fish deliveries. Today's a big live fish delivery. I did unpack most of the boxes. I have a few bags. Let's see, I've got 3 bags on the floor, and I've got a little bit of saltwater corals. So I'm going to kind of take care of that stuff while I'm talking with you guys. Excuse me for coughing. I'm assuming my audio is okay. I haven't heard anything, so okay. And since Chai Savage happens to be in the stream, I'm going to actually dedicate this stream to him. Not that I need any ideas about things to gripe about, but that being said, he had a great hypothetical question that we're going to answer today while I unbox some fish. But long story short, let's see, what was that building used for before? Oh, okay. Well, the ceiling actually really sucks. So if my landlord's watching this, he already knows this. But this is an old 1800s opera house. It's been divided into 6 units now. Underneath this really crappy ceiling is a $10,000 copper ceiling. So that kind of sucks. Some of the paint sometimes chips. Luckily, I haven't had any damage to like any of the tanks. I have seen a couple pieces on the floor here and there. I haven't caught anything in tanks, and luckily nothing has died, but this was a pet store prior to me owning it. So I'm going to assume that if something would have gone sideways, it would have happened by now. But yeah, so there's no insulation, very high vaulted ceilings with no insulation. So the winters are horrible here as far as the electric bill is concerned. But other than that, I have about 1,000 square feet here in the unit. I have access to the basement, which is an old, like basically a dirt cellar. It actually has trees as some of the support system. But yeah, so definitely an old building, lots of history to it. If you want to know if it's haunted, I'm going to say that it is. Please don't, think I'm crazy, although I kind of am in my own special way. But yeah, there's definitely been some activity here, not just, by way of me, but other tenants. To the left of me, if I'm facing outside, there's a dance studio on the first floor. To the right of me, there's a beauty salon, and then there's 3 units above us that are all apartment units. So that's the story on the facility. The front half of the facility, I have absolutely no idea how to turn this around. Okay, yes, I do. Give me 1 second. So the front of the facility is this area here. Originally, when this was just a pet store, the back room that I'll show you in a moment was a dog grooming room. My landlord is also working right now. He's off today, but that being said, these 2 bay windows actually house all of these plants. But long story short, he's been doing some repairs, so all the plants are kind of all over the place, as you can see, until I get my window space back. But the front section, if you start here, you're looking at, generally speaking, mostly community fish. And then over here is my discus display tank. And then over in this section here are more display tanks. This is the start of shrimp land. And then again, some more display tanks in this section here. These are all 10-gallon tanks that house more community fish. We also house all of our male beta. There's overflow, but we house all the male betas in each one of these 10-gallon tanks. Then there's some dry goods. We do live worms and feeders. Then here are all 29s and 20s, mostly all community fish in that section. In this section over here, we have mostly angelfish and rainbows. And then in this pond tub, I house my koi fish and any shabunkins, things of that nature. Right here, we have one reptile cage. These are my mud skippers. Then you have this section here, which is again all community fish throughout this U section. Then coming into this section, this is where I start cichlid land for the most part, but there's going to be plecos in most of these tanks, all different types of cichlids, whether they're pistogrammas, rams, we have imbunas, parrotfish, we have Lake Tanganyikan varieties here, and then over here are more expensive fish and then some rando stuff. I have my saltwater tank. Outside of that, it's for my own personal use. Down here, I have Kaiser newts. There's an imbu puffer. There's a hairy puffer. I have Beta macrostroma and some L46 zebra plecos. I have some rare rice fish in that low boy. Then there's some brackish water blennies up here. Let's see if my little boy wants to come out and say hi. This is the shop mascot, and he goes by the name of Pumpkin. When he's a good boy, he's a pumpkin. And when he's a bad boy, he's a little punk ass. But that being said, if you can see him in the sand, he doesn't want to pop up unless I give him a worm. And then again, we just have some random betta fish up here. And then walking into the back, which used to be a grooming facility, this is now where I keep most of my hardscape, rocks, wood. We have a sandbox here where you can basically design anything that you might be interested in designing for your tank. We also have some set here where you can just put these down and you know the tank size and you can design from there. Sorry, brain fart. In this tank we have pygmy sunfish. And then this is just kind of a variety of everything. We have haps and peacocks in this tank. I have a bunch of different types of puffer fish, rope fish. There's a bunch of eels, more puffers, Lake Tanganyikan, whole bunch of different types of rice fish in here. Let's see. These are all rando tanks with caridina shrimp and wild type bettas, some different types of Endler pears. We also keep the pom-pom crabs back here. In this tank here, we have more severums and geos. We sell live floating plants, which we keep in those tubs. In this tub here, we keep ranchu and arandas. And then in these two tubs here are more types of rice fish. So that's the general layout of the shop. Again, it's 1,000 square feet. There's 3,661 gallons of water pumping, and we're a little under 170 tanks at the moment. And other than that, we carry just about a little bit of this, a little bit of that. If you walk over into this section here, we also carry different types of isopods. We have land crabs, vampire crabs, Halloween crabs. So yeah, a little bit of everything. So we'll get to the topic at hand, I guess. Like I said, I can scroll through real quick and see what you guys have been talking about. Doesn't look like there's any questions. So yeah, we'll get to the topic at hand. Hi, I'm back. So basically, Chai said, what would my answer be to a customer if they came in and asked what they could put in a 20-gallon tank? So to anybody that's in the chat, it looks like there's 8 people in here. I'd almost kind of want to know what your answer would be first. And it interests me in knowing that. And what I mean is there's 9,000 answers you can provide to someone as to what you can put in a 20-gallon tank. And I wonder sometimes if it's even an appropriate question, because what you can put in it versus what you would want to put into it versus what you want, there's already 3 different answers to a question like that. And how many fish, depending on the fish, which you're really pushing it, forgive me, that's again determinant on what the customer wants. So If you wanted my sarcastic answer, which I said I would provide, you can put anything you want in a 20-gallon tank. Now, specifically, I'm going to talk about 20-gallon longs. I'm not a 20-gallon high kind of girl. I do believe that most fish want their left and their right versus their top and their bottom. So in that respect, a 20-gallon long is where we're going to start. But the true answer to that question is absolutely anything you want. And that's a horrible way to answer the question. But there are people out there that, depending on the store you go to, someone's going to walk in, they're going to see a 5.5, maybe even 6-inch Oscar fish, and that's what they want. And they have a 20-gallon tank, and that's what they're going to put in it. And people like myself are going to say, not going to happen. And then there might be the argument of, well, I'm going to upgrade the tank later. And my opinion, again, is still not going to happen. Because regardless of whether you upgrade that tank or not, the fish is already in an environment that it's not conducive for that particular fish at 5.5 inches long in a 20-gallon long. The tank itself is a 30-inch tank. And yes, the fish is going to be able to go left and right, but it also wants to grow rapidly. And in order to grow rapidly, it needs the open space in order to grow. It's also producing a lot more waste than if you had 6 rummy nose tetra in that 20-gallon long. So what type of filtration you have determines what's going to go in a 20 long. Now, to elaborate, and I'm sorry for being a wise ass and giving you an answer that says you can put anything you want in a 20-gallon tank. But if it's a customer that's coming in, that question itself can already create frustration with a fish store owner and with fish store employees. And the reason why it creates frustration with us is because we're not in your head. We don't know what you like. We don't know if you want a theme. We don't know if you want a planet aquarium. We don't know if you want a cichlid aquarium. We don't know if you came in and you want to buy a goldfish. And to be honest with you, a goldfish in a 20-gallon long term isn't a good idea either. So I hate saying that when customers come in here and say, I have a 20-gallon aquarium, what can I put in it? I kind of answer the question with a question. And my first question is, cool, you have a 20-gallon tank. Is it a 20-gallon high or is it a 20-gallon long? And if it's a newbie, chances are they look at me and go, well, it's this big. And that's great because I don't know what this big means. And then sometimes when people say it's this big, it's really this big, but they think it's this big. But when we go around the room and I say, okay, so it's that 20-gallon over there? No, it's smaller than that. Oh, well, is it the 10 gallons that are over there, as I showed you guys earlier? Nah, smaller than that. And then we walk over and we look at the shrimp tanks, which are 5.5s. And you know what ends up happening? That's the tank they've got, a 5.5. So I'm sorry I'm losing my train of thought on that one, but it has happened more than once. So let's start with that. Now let's pretend that they actually have a 20-gallon tank. It's a 20-gallon long. They know it's a 20-gallon long. They've even cycled it. We'll save that argument too, because again, from a business owner perspective and from an employee perspective, once you get past the fact that we figured out what size the tank is, you put water in it yesterday, and the only thing I'm going to honestly sell you is a bottle of live bacteria, and I'm going to beg you to look at YouTube videos, and chances are you're going to get mad at me. I'm going to get a 1-star review and you're going to go buy a fish someplace else, because I've got competitors around here. They're willing to sell to you, and that's okay too, because I really didn't want you to kill my fish. So on a bad day, those situations go poorly. But we're going to pretend that this is going well. But the customer still has no clue what they want to put in the 20-gallon tank. I see Funk saying stuff in a bunch of capital letters, but I'm not reading. I'm going to try to stay focused. So the customer comes in, they have a 20-gallon tank. It's a 20-gallon long. They don't know what they want to put in it. They watched absolutely no videos. So we're going to start at the bottom and work our way up from there. My first main question, the tank is cycled, we're ready to rock. They even brought me a water sample and I tested everything. Long story short, they're ready to rock. And my main question is going to be, what do you like? And usually I get, well, show me. And that's really hard to do here because honestly, the entire store is a showroom. So it's always best to look around. So I give you the main layout. layout. Exactly what we just walked through is exactly what I say to the customers. This is where community starts. This is where my larger community starts. This is where my cichlids start. And in the back room, it's a mixed bag. Outside of that, the best thing a customer can do for an employee at a store is to have some kind of layout of what they want. Community fish is a very broad term to use when you have a fish tank because, again, there's different sizes of community fish. Not all community fish like each other. Like, for instance, a tiger barb to me is a fin nippy individual. So I kind of watch anything with long flowy fins that move slow. I'm not going to really consider that just because that other type of fish might be community, that it belongs with a tiger barb. So there's a lot of balance and harmony involved in designing a 20-gallon tank. And that's where I need feedback from a customer in order to give advice. If you want a 20-gallon tank and you want somebody to design it for you, then in all honesty, you should just hire a company and then they'll just pick out a bunch of live bearers and they'll give you the basics. And that's the way to rock with it. And that's okay. But it helps when a customer actually has an idea of what they want. So, for instance, they tell me that they've bought a bunch of live plants, they've had the tank cycling for 4 weeks, everything's looking good. Based on them being heavily planted, I'm not going to recommend certain cichlids for that tank because certain cichlids like to eat plants. They might have a sand bottom, and some cichlids like to sand sift, so that's great. But when you have a cichlid that likes to sand sift and you have a heavily planted tank, chances are your plants are being uprooted because they're sifting sand. In the Flesh has a question. Do pea puffers get sick a lot like people say? I don't know who the people are, and I'm going to say it depends on where they're purchasing them from. Um, I I see pea puffers get murdered by other pea puffers, but I don't see pea puffer sickness. If they're wild caught, chances are they definitely need to be dewormed. So if you go to a store and you find pea puffers that are really thin towards their back end, there's no real belly there, but there's like a tiny ball for a head, chances are they're riddled with worms. I would definitely treat them with Expel P. I would try to get them through 2 treatments because they usually come in rather small when they're wild caught. So even going through a barrage of medicine with pea puffers, they can die going through the barrage of medicine. If you get them through that, then definitely chunk them up to the best of your ability. And at that point, you're probably okay. But I've personally never experienced issues with my pea puffers. I do try to get homebred more so than wild caught. Every once in a while, I am stuck with wild caught, but when I bring them in, I'm expel peeing them. I'm feeding them frozen bloodworm, tubifex worms. I'm throwing in snails, which I've noticed that long-term pea puffers will murder snails. Doesn't mean they're necessarily eating the snails, but that's just a pea puffer thing. The only experience I've had long term with pea puffers, and I've had them in my home before I even owned the store, was that I had a rogue female and she definitely murdered her roommates. So she lived in a 5 gallon until she passed over time of old age. But I can imagine that sickness is out there. There's wild collectors that have ethics and morals and standards and they do things right, and sometimes they even pre-treat things before they even come into our country. There's wholesalers that also, once they receive fish, they're pre-treating before they're sold to retail stores. But once they're in the retail stores hands, it's up to us to examine them, treat them if they need to be treated. Also, as far as I'm concerned, as a store, I want to know where I'm sourcing from. Again, I try to get homebred on anything and everything I possibly can. So I can only imagine that, yes, there's definitely sickness out there, but I think it comes down to sourcing. But as a customer, and that's kind of a lot of what I want to do with this. And I'm not going to always be live streaming. This was kind of just for the fun of it. But what I really want to do is try to, I'm saying this the wrong way, but I want to try to train customers to be better customers. And forgive me for saying it that way. I know it sounds really harsh, but when we go into stores, employees, store owners, me, hi, we're not experts. And we have one of two choices to make every single time a customer walks through the door. We can bullshit you and make the sale and not care, or we can be honest with you, upfront with you, and even tell you, how do you know I'm telling you the truth? And what I mean by that is I have customers come in and they'll tell me, you're the expert. You tell me this, you tell me that. Fine, cool. You want to treat me like the expert? I'm going to tell you everything I think I know. And that doesn't mean I do know. And it's up to me if I'm to you or if I'm telling you the truth. And as a store owner, and I mean this for all of you guys as customers, there is no reason why you should be taking anything I'm saying at face value. This whole phone that I'm on right now, I don't know why it is not used in fish stores. And I mean that literally. I don't know why this phone is not used in fish stores outside of price checking, but it's an invaluable tool when you are in a fish store that you can literally, if you ask me, do pea puffers get sick a lot, like people say, and I just answered that question, there's no reason why you can't go to ChatGPT, Gemini, or just a simple Google search and see if what I'm telling you is true or accurate or what the statistics are. And if anything, correct us when we're wrong. You have nothing to lose. What's the worst we're going to tell you? To get out? Because honestly, that should be the least of your problems. You're buying a live animal. So you can get hustled at fish stores. I don't recommend you get hustled at fish stores. So ask questions and see what kind of answers you actually get. See if you feel like you're getting played. So going back to the pea puffers, as a customer, walk into a store, and if you want pea puffers, look at somebody and say, do you know if these are wild caught or if they were homebred? See what kind of answer you get. There's also ways to tell some of the wild caughts versus homebred, but that's a whole nother ballgame, and we won't even get into that. I learned that one in a weird way. But ask if they're homebred, ask if they're wild caught. If people tell you things are wild caught, your follow-up question to that would be, well, did you treat them? Did you expel pee them? You could also sit there and stare at them. You could ask the employee to feed them and then wait around for a little bit and see if they poop and see if they're expelling worms or if they're taking a poop. Pea puffers are small, digestive system moves fast, so you'd be surprised what you can see in a half an hour. And here's another tip, and I'm going to turn you around and show you the tip. So you walked into a fish store, you want to know if they're treating their things, you want to know if there's any medicines, look for a wall. This is a whole wall of medicine. There's copper safe, there's Noxic, there's buffers, yeah, but there's Canaplex. Behind that's erythromycin, there's Prosipro. Down here is my Expel P and a bunch of other stuff. I've got straight up Levamisol right here. And then there's just an endless list. So when you're in a store, not only should you ask questions, but investigate. Wait, I'm going to spin you guys back around here. So there's my net bucket. Next to the net bucket is net safe. See if they are just hanging nets on a wall and they're not dipping the nets, because that's how cross contamination happens, or at least one of the easiest ways to get cross contamination. But investigate the pet store that you're going to. So little tips and tricks, but again, I'm trying to a certain degree to make customers better customers, because I have definitely taken heat for customers being trained elsewhere and definitely being lied to. And if I tell them the truth, it doesn't matter if Google tells them the truth or I tell them the truth. They'd rather take it out on me than to go yell at the store that's been lying to them, where things are getting killed, the compatibility doesn't match. And I do think there's certain customers that rely heavily on what the employees say and what the store owners say, and it doesn't mean that they're all telling you the truth. I am very fortunate at my store. Like I said, it's an old 1800s opera house, but I'm very fortunate at my store that I have extremely cheap rent. I have a very low overhead here outside of the winter months on the electric bill. But because of that, I am not, and I mean this like nothing crossed, I'm not desperate for money. And that's not because of what I did in my former job or anything like that. I am always going to be honest. I would rather eat ramen noodles than to sell something just because I need to make rent or pay bills at home, whatever the case may be. And those are stores you should be shopping at. If they're being honest with you, even if you don't like the answer, at least you got something for nothing, which was that honesty, which to me is priceless. So now that I'm done with that rant, let's see, what else do we have? Okay, so nothing more as far as the peas are concerned. So getting back to this 20-gallon tank thing, sorry that I rambled off, but long story short, there's no real good answer to give to somebody on what they can put in a tank. There's a crap ton. Sorry, I was about to curse. There's a crap ton of YouTubers out there. Top 10 fish for a 20. Top 10. What do they call that? The display fish for a 20. All those things. I don't know. It's regurgitated to a certain degree. But I have customers that they want a 20-gallon tank and they want everything to be black and white. They want a whole monochromatic tank. So in a case like that, you do black penguin, hopefully I'm back. I don't know what happened, but we definitely lost internet. So I just switched over to Wi-Fi. So my apologies. We're not meant to answer to this 20-gallon question, I'm telling you. Chai, this is all your fault. So anyway, there is no one answer. And that's honestly the point of all of this. And I do apologize for all the difficulties. So I guess popping a live stream cherry is definitely not all that it's cracked to be. But I can ramble on and on about how I can't really give anybody an answer on what they want in a 20-gallon, and that's kind of the point of the question. And what I mean by that is if you want to get into this hobby, you have to do some research. You have to have a game plan in mind. I could compare this to wanting to buy a car. If you go to a car dealership and say, I want to buy a car, and that's all you say, it's completely up to the car salesman to put you into a vehicle of their choosing. And what I mean by that is if you give the car salesman a little bit of feedback, you want a pickup truck because you're doing construction, and obviously having a pickup truck is going to help when you're running back and forth to Home Depot. Or you want a two-door sports car because you want to relive your 20s even though you're in your 60s and whatever the case may be, so you need a convertible to show off. But when you give just a little bit of feedback to a salesman, and that's technically what I am, even though I'm treated like a human Google, but that feedback is important to us. When you have a planted aquarium and you want to do community fish, there's so many options out there. And as far as the stocking, which was a question that Chai had, the stocking's determinant on what you like. What I mean by that is I like rummy nose tetras. They're a gorgeous fish. I'll actually walk over to those guys right now to show you what I mean when I answer this question. But you can put rummy nose tetra into a 20-gallon long, no problem. But, oops, apparently my orientation is locked and I can't move it. This, however, is rummy nose tetra in a 30-gallon long. And as you see, there's a leader, and they're going to go back and forth, and they're going to zip all the way from the left, all the way back over to the right. The more space they have, the bigger the group that they're in, the more you get this behavior. Now, I have customers that come in and they want 3. And for those of us that are well-seasoned hobbyists, we know that a school, at least they say, and they is going to be your Google example, a school is a group of 6 or more. If you can fit 8 into the tank comfortably and they're happy, 8 is even better than 6, because the more you have, the more you get their true proper behavior, which matters. It matters a lot for the fish. It matters for their longevity, their overall health, and that swim space. And that's why I went with the 20 long versus the 20 high, because they're getting more space out of the 20 long than they are getting use out of a 20 high. So that being said, if you had this 20 long and you bought 8 rummy nose tetra, technically speaking, I don't know if I would necessarily put in any other schools of darting fish. Maybe the rummies are supposed to be that large school that's going left to right and giving you that constant movement. Maybe I would throw in a pearl gourami or possibly a keyhole cichlid or a ram, a German ram, or maybe even a Bolivian ram. Doesn't have to be a betta fish. Outside of that, I would definitely get some autosinkless versus having a pleco, and that would be to keep my bio load down. But I would use the autosinkless to my advantage, because if I'm heavily planted, the autos are going to be on the plants taking care of algae. Whereas a pleco as a juvenile, yes, they can definitely do some work in the tank and clean algae, but as an adult, they kind of find that favorite piece of driftwood, pile on the poop to that favorite piece of driftwood, and wait to be fed at night. So it's not that I don't promote the sale of a pleco, but I think a lot of newbies have the wrong idea of a pleco. So if you wanted an algae cleanup crew, I would suggest autosinkless. I would suggest a mystery snail if you're worried about babies. They lay their egg sacs above water. You've got about 2 weeks to either chuck that in the garbage or crunch it up and throw it in the tank, and it's just a snack for the fish. But that would be one suggestion with a heavily planted tank. Also, with a heavily planted tank, if you're getting into the micro nanos, so what I mean by that would be like green cubitoys, CPDs, any of your micro rasboras like chilies, phoenix, strawberries, stuff of that nature. If we're talking pygmy cories or Hescatus, habrosus, there's so many different types of pygmy species that you could load up in a 20 gallon. And what I mean by load up is they have very low bioload. You have a heavily planted tank. So in all honesty, you could probably put 20 chilies in that tank. You could put 6 autosynclus in that tank. You could probably put 15 pygmy cories in that tank. Throw in, I don't know, another 12 neon blue axelrodi rasboras, and you're still not overloaded. Now we can run into old school thinking and say, but it's 1 inch per gallon, and 1 inch per gallon is BS. It's very relative to larger fish. And what I mean by that is, again, a larger fish has more bioload, but again, you can alter that by saying you have haps and peacocks, and those guys have to be overstocked. But then again, you're upgrading your filtration. So we're taking plants out of that equation. And let's say we're going with a 55 or a 75 for haps and peacocks, that you want to overstock and try to keep male only. But that you want to overstock because you're trying to fight off aggression. You also want to throw in some wave makers so that when they want to get into a fight, they're fighting the wave maker and wearing themselves down and not trying to kill each other. But those tanks are where you're throwing hang on back filters with canister filters and a whole bunch of other things, because the amount of bioload you're making, 1 inch per gallon is also irrelevant, but having overfiltration is very relevant to be able to overstock. There's no one mathematical equation that fixes all the problems for the 19 different scenarios I could give you as to what fits in a 20-gallon tank. So that is my very long-winded answer, and why when I say the answer to that question truly is anything you want, it's because that is the answer. I know pet stores that have 12-inch Oscars in 20-gallon longs, and they can't turn in the tanks. It's disheartening. I would never do that to a fish. I would never do that to any animal. When you do things like that to a fish, it's like, I actually said this last night to somebody. It's like buying a Rottweiler and keeping it caged in a Chihuahua crate its entire life. You just don't do that. I think there's a big difference in somebody having a fish and being a fish keeper when you see fish that are just too big for the environment they're in. It's an old wise tale that these fish only grow to the size of their aquarium. And, without getting into all of that, just, think about the environment, think of the space that you would want. And when you go to a fish store, we have all these resources. And again, YouTube is a phenomenal resource if you just want the basics or if you want to explore. YouTube allows you to go down so many rabbit holes, and most of them are fun. This is a science project. It's one great big experiment. There's no right answer to a lot of different questions that people ask. We, I think, rely too much on experts, and I don't believe in experts. So there's that part. Is there any questions regarding 20-gallon tanks that anybody wants to ask? And yes, Michelle, fish abuse. See, Michelle's in this chat and she's one of my awesome customers. But that being said, Michelle, whoopsie, Michelle keeps Mbuna cichlids, and she keeps a bunch of stuff. But that being said, she's got her Mbunas, and she's got her heavily stocked tank with a whole bunch of filtration and 90 bazillion caves and a whole bunch of faux plants. And that being said, these guys are thriving. She's got so many chunky monkeys, and that entire tank was based on research. She learned about different names of some of the Mbunas. She doesn't come in and just say that one's pretty, I want that one. She's learned about all her kids, but she did homework before she came in, and I don't mean that nastily, but it's part of this hobby is homework. And she treats these fish probably as good as she would treat her children. That's a true hobbyist to me. There's many levels to fish keeping. The only way to level up in fish keeping is by way of yourself. We can train you if that's what you want to call it, but again, we're all memorizing information. I have earbuds in all day long. I'm listening to a bunch of different people on YouTube. I am memorizing what they say. I'm questioning what they say. I'm double checking what they say. That's a true hobbyist. When you just take somebody's word for it, honestly, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. There's more to this than just regurgitating what other people say. I've been very lucky. When you go to certain aquarium clubs, there's people that know the scientific names of absolutely everything. They can tell you all the stats. They can tell you the gestation periods. They can tell you where it comes from, exact body of water. But the big question that you should be asking is, have you ever owned it? Because I've learned, and if Funk's in here, he might appreciate this. A lot of people, and I'm generalizing when I say this, a lot of people say, I have a proven pair of angelfish. They've paired off, they're going to be together forever. That's a pair. And a couple of years ago, around Christmas time, because this is where my sarcasm shines, it was Christmas Eve, and I was getting ready to close the store, and there was 4 customers in here besides myself, and we're looking at a 55-gallon angelfish tank, and there's literally a fish gangbang going on. And there was a very happy male angelfish in there that was doing the deed with 4 females, and they were lined up one by one by one, and he would do his thing, and the next one would line up, and they were exchanging presents. That's how I looked at it. But I was always told by every single person in fish tube land that they paired off and this is the way it's going to be and they're not going to switch out. And these guys definitely switched out. So again, when you go to that aquarium club and people are giving you all the stats, what experience do they have with the fish? Because everybody's experience is different. I have customers that come in and they watch the behavior of certain cichlids and they want the one that's, shy or being on its best behavior and he's not a tank bully. And I'll usually giggle as I'm getting that fish. And I will explain why I'm giggling, but I'm giggling because you're about to change that fish's entire environment. So just because it's well behaved here at the shop means absolutely nothing when it gets to your house. And that's the God's honest truth. Just happened to a customer about 2 weeks ago. He bought my large male Nicaraguan cichlid. Beautiful cichlid, very well behaved in my 75-gallon. He was with larger geophagus and severums, also the Chalceus tetras. So that being said, he got him home. He put him just with parrots and everything was fine. Oh no, I'm sorry, parrots and severums. Everything was fine for about a week. And 2 days ago, he's now become the tank boss. He's going after 2 severums. He's leaving the parrots alone, but he's establishing his dominance. So even though he was well behaved here, his entire life changed the second he went into a bag. He's not in a larger tank. He's in a 75-gallon, but his roommates have changed and he's going to establish that he's now King Dingaling. So there's that to factor in. What else can I talk about besides the fact that I need to unbag some fish? Let's see. What if they're dead set at getting that Oscar? Oh God. What if they're dead set? Chances are they're probably leaving without the Oscar. I'm not going to lie. I can try to explain to them all the reasons why it's not a good idea. You know, I honestly, Funk, they're going to leave without the fish. I can dance around that one 50 different ways. I can try to convince them to get a bigger tank. I'll tell them I can hold the fish, go get the bigger tank. But if they're going to take a 5.5-inch Oscar fish and throw it in a 20-gallon long, I don't know if I can honestly believe they're going to upgrade to the 40 or the 55. I will say, though, to save myself those arguments, that's kind of the reason why I don't carry a lot of the larger predatory fish here at the shop. I do it special order. I've brought in a wide variety of large exotic fish, but I know these people. I know they have a 300-gallon aquarium at home or a 180 to house other things that are going to grow out. But honestly, I try to save myself those kinds of arguments, and that's just the way the store is set up. I had a woman try to stab me because I wouldn't sell her a Malawi eye biter to go with her goldfish and her angelfish in a 20-gallon long. Actually, the Malawi eye biter was running almost 6 inches. I had him in a 55 with a couple other haps. But yeah, she was bouncing off walls, screaming at me, calling me every name in the book, telling me I better put it in a bag. And next thing you know, I'm holding on to a pair of scissors because she's trying to come at me and it didn't go well. So, no, definitely didn't sell the fish. Didn't care about the 1 star. But I just because you want something doesn't mean I'm going to give it to you. I'm really sorry. Maybe I would have been a horrible parent if I had children, but just because you want doesn't mean I'm obligated to give. I'm okay with the customer not being always right. I'm okay with refusing the sale. Yeah, that's kind of just the way it is. Let's see. Jai said his Christmas wasn't like that. Yeah, no, a lot of people's Christmases weren't that way, but it was definitely an angelfish key party. And yes, Nicaraguan cichlids are absolutely awesome. Let's see. Ah, Mick, that's a good question. So I'll be honest with you, I am really offended that in the United States there is not proper permitting or any type of real supervision for fish stores. We can work with the Department of Agriculture with regards to plants. And give me 1 second, guys. I'm sorry, Amazon's doing a drop off real quick. Hi, how are you? Good. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay. Oh, just this one? All right. Thank you. No, 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 you're good. Thank you. You too. Okay, so back to Mick's question. There is nothing as far as the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I don't think there is anything with other states either, but I would be lying if I said there truly isn't. Should there be? Yes. The Department of Agriculture definitely oversees live aquarium plants and things of that, invasive species, what you can and cannot have. Um, there's the Humane Society actually works with big box stores and they go in and they do inspections, and Petco's and PetSmarts get graded by the Humane Society on their cleanliness and protocols and things of that nature. But there's really not a lot of protocols in place. We do have the fish police. So the Department of Wildlife has the fish police, and they come into stores quietly and undercover, so to speak, inspecting to see what we have. There's a guy about half hour north of me who's notorious for bringing in the Mexican orange mini lobsters, which are generally speaking a form of a crayfish. And in Pennsylvania, crayfish are illegal. And we can all argue until we're blue in the face. I don't get it personally because a mini Mexican crayfish, lobster, whatever you want to call it, is not going to survive in the Delaware or the Lehigh over winter. I just don't see it happening. We have tons of self-cloning crayfish, which are also illegal, but they're in our water. So making them illegal to me doesn't make any sense, but they are illegal here. There are places that bring them in. There's some basement operations that bring them in and quietly sell them. But the fish police will come after you. Post a couple pictures on Facebook, and I'm sure you're going to get in trouble. The guy that's doing it with a fish store, he's gotten banged multiple times. It's a $250 fine for each crayfish. So I guess to him, it's worth the risk. I'm assuming he probably sells a lot of them, considering you're not supposed to, and everybody wants something they can't have. So maybe he's making enough bank that covers the fine, but I know he's gotten hit numerous times. My first year here, I met the fish police. They were really nice. It was kind of interesting. They were looking at my, uh, yeah, vampire crabs. And the younger rookie guy was looking at the sergeant that was in charge, and he's like, "Hey, boss, are these legal?" And I kind of stepped over real quick, and I was like, "They most certainly are." I was like, "And they just discovered 20 new species in India, and I'll be bringing those in too." So I do try to stay on top of things with what we can have and what we can't have. I don't want to deal with the fish police. I was in the criminal justice industry for over 25 years, so I want to follow the rules and I want to do right. I've had customers come in and say that they have certain things they shouldn't have, and I kind of try to warn them. Definitely don't put it on Facebook. It's not my business. I'm not going to snitch them out for what they do, but I wish there was better regulations. I do know in other countries, I can't remember the woman's name. I was listening to her podcast, but they can't sell you a goldfish if you have a goldfish bowl. If they can refuse sales, and if they don't refuse the sales, you can actually lose your licensing in a fish store, depending on like what country it's in. And I think if we could, I'm a horrible person because I understand regulation is really bad for a bunch of different reasons. I understand the Lacey Act and all that stuff, but but holding a live animal shop, whether it's dogs, cats, whatever, holding us liable to be responsible business, having responsible business practices, that's very important. Looking at the broad spectrum of what can be imported, what's illegal in each state, and things like that, I think that's an argument for a different day. But as far as people coming in here and inspecting the place, seeing that I'm using meds, seeing what kind of filtration system I have, how am I taking care of the deceased fish, am I dumping floating plants into the drain, dumping them down the toilet, things like that, it matters. I've heard horror stories from customers at different stores and or work experiences, and just I if we were regulated, I think people would be more responsible. I again, my sarcastic side and my criminal justice experience, I've said this numerous times at the store, and I do mean it. There are people in this industry that are like drug dealers with fish. It's a product like anything else. They don't care. They're flipping it. It doesn't matter if it was sick, it's out of their hands. It doesn't matter if the tank is riddled with Colmenares worms. Who cares? We made the sale. We can deal with the tank later. I don't, I can't imagine doing that to someone. I have definitely been sold sick fish. I have received sick fish. I have received one-eye fish. And it's like, how did you miss that? Now, I will say that I've also had corridoras. I had a one-eye corridora once and I didn't know. And I sold a pack of 12 and the guy got home and that night he's looking at the Cory and I took responsibility. It doesn't matter if I could sit here and deny that, oh, that must have happened when he got home or whatever. I could have done that, but I took full responsibility for it. I gave him back his money on his credit card for that one fish, and he still has it, and it's perfectly fine. But it has one eye, so either I received it that way or it happened here at the shop. But I took responsibility for that. But we should always be checking. All my fish tanks here at the shop run on independent systems. I don't have any sumps. So when fish come in, I am inspecting those fish. I am treating them if they need to be treated. I'm not going to lie. I'm not proactive on treating. And the reason being is I don't have quarantine tanks here. So I'm very careful where I'm buying from. I'm acclimating the fish properly. I'm observing the fish. Sometimes I will hit them with Canaplex or Noxic. In the winter, especially with like my ram cichlids and my epistogrammas, I will hit them with a little bit of Noxic because if they get chilly on the overnight temps in the boxes when they're coming to me, they can definitely get stressed extremely easily. So I will definitely hit them up in the winter just for shits and giggles to be, careful. But proactively treating every single delivery isn't beneficial to any other fish that might be in the tanks. So I do not sell the same day. I do not sell the next day. I sell fish that are new arrivals when I feel they're ready to be sold. And that I am very picky of where they come from. I am not the type of person that orders from one company. So there's certain companies that have awful rummy nose tetras. There's other companies that have excellent rummy nose tetras. If I'm not ordering from that company with the good rummies and I'm sold out, I'm not going to substitute. I'm always going to stick to which companies have the best of something because then I have more faith in the product coming in here. And chances are it's not going to be sick. So that matters a lot to me. Um, let's see. Permits, licensing, just talking with Mick. Let's see. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just scrolling through because there's a lot here. I'm reading what Mick is saying. Oh, wow. They require the same knowledge from hobbyists as for professionals. Interesting. Yeah, and see, that's the thing. It's everything in any industry is a double-edged sword. I took some marine biology courses. I actually wanted to be a marine biologist when I was in high school. From there, I ended up in culinary arts, and then from culinary arts, I got into criminal justice. So I've been all over the place with my education. But I, I appreciate education. I appreciate degrees. There's book smarts and then there's street smarts. I can promise you that hands-on experience, at least for me, has been much more important than any book smarts that I've ever gained in life. The book smarts is a path, but learned experience is just that. You use your book smarts in learned experience, but I don't know. I mean, calling somebody a professional, I don't think anybody. I'm a horrible person. I'm going to say this. There's professionals I know that know less than a hobbyist, and vice versa. So again, I think everybody's experience is different. I think everybody's knowledge is different. But again, I don't believe in experts, at least in this field. And that's because we're renaming, CPDs or Galaxy Rasboras. We're renaming Corridoras. We're constantly renaming. We're constantly discovering. There's certain plecos that have two L numbers because as juveniles they look one way, as adults they look another. So instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, they just have those two different L numbers based on their transitional period. So again, there's so much out there in the world of just animals and fish that we're constantly going to be discovering new things. So it's hard to say what training an employee needs or should have. But there should, like Petco and PetSmart, they have like courses that the employees can take. But if we look at a big box store perspective, we know, because we've all complained about Petco's and PetSmarts, that there's better ways to do a lot of the things that they do. So if the government stepped in and they made the standards to be how Petco employees are trained or how PetSmart employees are trained, I think it could be disastrous for a lot of different reasons. At least, like I'm a novice when it comes to reptiles, but from what I hear when I'm listening to YouTubes for people that are in the reptile world at a Petco or a PetSmart, they'll constantly put certain species on sand and they shouldn't have sand. They should have this or they should have that, or they should, have this heating unit and not whatever the Petco corporate standard is. So if we had to follow those standards, I think it would be very problematic. But do I believe there should be some form of oversight for pet stores through the government? Yeah. We have to set the bar somewhere. We're leaving it up to you guys to investigate the pet store and make a conscious decision as to whether or not you trust what's coming out of our mouths. And I'm also here to say that I don't think you should be trusting everything coming out of our mouths, especially if we don't know what we're talking about. So I think there's a lot of blind faith involved when people shop at pet stores, and that kind of confuses me. Like I said, people put their cell phones away, I think, too much in a pet store. And I'll take you up front and show you real quick, but here at the store, I'm the first one to tell people that they should actually do their homework, that Google is their friend, and my sign is right here. First and foremost, when it says helpful shopping tips, Google is your friend. And it is just an invaluable resource. Like, people tell me they want something colorful, and that's cool, but a lot of these fish are juveniles. If you want to see what a geophagus looks like, any species of geophagus, when they grow their thread fins and the beautiful blues and pinks that you get out of them, you want to take out your phone and you want to look at that fish once it hits 5 inches, 6 inches, and not the 2 inches that I sell some of them at. Same thing with rainbow fish. Okay, you want a colorful rainbow fish, so maybe you pick a Millennium or a Parkinsoni or a New Guinea red. But what you see at 2.5 inches isn't what you're going to get at 5 inches. They grow that big old weird belly, and it's like a totally different fish. And maybe people don't want something that looks that weird. But again, taking out your phone and looking at it doesn't hurt. And I honestly, I've begged customers to do that. And next thing you know, I'm walking over, grabbing my phone and showing it to them. And then I get oh, wow, yeah, I'll take a couple of those. So, definitely take out your phone, do your homework, question the employees, and see if you think you're getting honest answers. And if you don't trust the answer, again, you have your phone right in your hands. Speaking of the list here, water parameters. A lot of people will tell you my parameters are good. And so, again, in my infinite sarcasm, my sign says my parameters are good is not a reading that we have ever seen on our water testing kit. And that's the truth, because your parameters aren't my parameters, and I don't know what good means. And there's a reason why I'm going to say that. Good constitutes a lot of different aspects. So using, let's say, a cardinal or a neon tetra as an example, if that fish is wild caught, it's possible that it came from pH at 4.5. So that fish was wild caught, came in at pH 4.5. Maybe when it gets back to wherever it's going to, be held until it ends up in a bag and ends up in the United States, maybe that pH is 5, 5.5. Now it gets over to stateside, and let's say it lands in Florida. Now the pH is 6.5, 7. Then sits in another bag, gets to me. Now my pH is somewhere between 7 and 7.4. That fish is totally stressed. And wild caught, usually when you get a bag, half the bag is dead. So my guys aren't wild caught. My cardinals, my neons, and my rummies are all homebred. They are homebred in neutral parameters, sitting right at 7. So when I buy a bag of those guys, I get a bag of them and they're all alive and they're used to 7. So another important question as a customer coming into a fish store is, like I said earlier, is this wild caught or is this homebred? Because a fish, I get customers that come in and they're like, oh, I got the perfect setup. I've got tannins in the tank. I got my pH down to 4.5. I'm going to make a biotope for these neon tetras. Oh, well, unfortunately, if you decide to buy an 8-pack of those neon tetras today that have been sitting at 7.4 for 2.5 weeks, chances are you're going to dump them into your tank and they're going to die, which means you now have to drip acclimate those or slow it down a little bit and get those guys reintroduced to their natural parameters. But knowing whether something was wild caught or homebred is extremely important, because when we do look up fish, it tells you what the parameters are for that fish in its in nature, not in your tank. If you have well water, chances are you have harder water, higher pH. There's certain fish that want lower pH, softer water. I tell a lot of people that have pH of 8 and higher, Tanganyikan, that's a perfect pH for some Lake Tanganyikan species, if not most. So if you don't want to dabble with chasing parameters, adjusting things, and figuring out how to make your water work for every single type of fish, there's workarounds. If you like licorice gourami, they tend to like a softer water. So, that can help you out. You don't really want to put those in hard water. Guppies love harder water. Most live bearers love harder water. So again, I'm kind of all over the place, but doing your research is what matters. Outside of doing your research, ask questions. Don't always assume when you go into a fish store that the answer is what you read, but at the same time, having some information is very helpful. We can, forgive me for saying, we can either correct you and say, well, yes, that's true in the wild. However, these are homebred, so this is actually what they're used to. But having an open conversation with the store is very important. Giving us some background information is very important. But then again, don't necessarily treat us like we have all the answers. don't necessarily treat us like we're just supposed to design the tank start to scratch or start to finish and know what you're thinking and know what you want, because there's so many options. And the other thing I'm going to say, and this is just another tip and trick for a store, when you want to put a bunch of stuff together, but you don't see those fish together in any fish store you go to, chances are they don't belong together. And I'm sorry for laughing, but I'm saying that because I've definitely had people say, but this is what I want, and I'm going to make it work, and so on and so forth. And when the conversation digresses and it just doesn't work out, I tend to explain to people that if what they want to house together really worked, I'd have 3 more empty tanks at the shop that I could fill with other fish. So when you are researching, if the first 8 pages of Google say it's not a good idea, I'm going to recommend that it's not a good idea. We don't have to go to page 9 and 10 to try to say it's going to work. And if you want to do it, by all means, I'm not going to stop you, but I am going to stop you here at this store. And you can hate me all you want for that, but I don't have to sell the fish the same way. And now, Mick is in here. It's the same way in other countries. They legally can't make the sale. So maybe I just got to pretend that I'm in Europe and that's the policy. I'm on European standards. So, yeah, let's see what else. I'm going to scroll through all of this and I'm going to apologize and I'm going to say stuff in comments because I am not good at doing 2 things at once. But I'm all the way down to the bottom now where Mick is saying today's real situation for running a pet store is far from what it was in the 1970s or 60s. Oh, I can only imagine. So I'm going to be 49 this year. And when I first moved here from New York, there was a pet store that was off of a bicycle bike path, and I would go there. I'd ride my bike there, and she was the exotic store in town. She had Russian dwarf hamsters before they were a thing. She had little spider monkeys, you name it, she had it. It was pretty neat. And I can only imagine how many things that were in that store that were illegal. It was probably the wild, wild west. It's definitely gotten more stringent over time. But the the ethical people, those have changed over time as well. But yeah, I mean, the benefits though from the back in the day mentality is there's old tried and true tested methods that still work. All the new technology, the bells and whistles, gizmos and gadgets, not all of them are necessary, because again, if it worked in the 50s and the 60s and even in the 70s, there's no reason why it still doesn't work. Some things are obsolete, some things have been improved upon, but I can use how it was back in the day versus how it is now. The perfect example would be my salt tank. My salt tank runs, give me 1 second. My salt tank right here runs on a canister filter, which is behind that stand right there. Outside of that, there's no sump attached to this. I do not use RO water. I actually use straight out of the tap. And as long as I'm playing with soft corals and keeping it simple, everything's fine. And now the whole world can yell at me because this also hasn't had a water change in a year and a half. But that's my old school method. The RODI systems weren't invented until I think 1991, and people were keeping salt in the 70s. So that being said, how did they keep salt alive in the 70s if RODI wasn't invented until 91? So there's a saltwater place about 40 minutes from me, and they'll sell you all the bells and whistles. They'll tell you that you need to do this, that, and the third to have even just a fowler tank, which is just, fish without any corals in it. And that's just not the case. So I have some really cool old timer customers that have become family over the years. And the one gentleman, Angelo, that comes in, I looked at him straight faced and said, "Hey, like, you did salt. This is what you did. This is how you did it, and I'd like to do it too. Teach me." So he did, and I'm grateful for that. Not everything has to be about the bells and whistles and the new technology. And again, what works for me might not necessarily work for anybody else. Thanks to me doing this saltwater method, that's the whole reason why the back room isn't saltwater, because the high-tech saltwater people told me about how none of that stuff was going to live. I don't know what I'm doing. Everything's going to die. And it's kind of funny because that $300 clownfish has been with me almost 3.5 years now. He's still alive. He's thriving. He's happy. Everything else that's gone in that tank stayed alive, thriving, happy. So I wanted to save myself the argument with people that thought everything had to be high tech, everything had to be RO water. And that's why the back room is an assault room. So saved myself the argument. I do it special order only. And customers that trust my methods buy from me and they get their saltwater supplied same day. So I'll order it. It comes in, they pick it up the same night in the bag, they acclimate. There's no warranty or guarantees, which mostly in the saltwater world there isn't anyway. And off they go. And I make sure I use trusted sources, and I make sure that if the fish comes in and it doesn't look healthy or whatever it is doesn't look healthy, well, then it is my responsibility. And before it gets transferred to them, then I will quarantine it. I will take care of it. Or God forbid it came DOA. That's not the customer's problem. That's mine. But once it's in the customer's hand as a specialty item, then it's their problem. So let's see. What else do I got here? Oh my goodness. You were working in the fish store when I was born. Oh boy, oh boy. We're all showing our age on this stream. All right. So on that note, guys, that's all I've got to say as far as the 20-gallon long. I did say that I was going to do an unboxing with you. Luckily, these fish are okay. So I'm going to put some stuff up on the counter and give you a little sneak peek of some things that came in. I'm not going to take you with me when I move this stuff over to the different tanks. But that being said, this is the last box that I didn't put away. And in this bag here, oh, you want to talk about blackworm. So this is my blackworm order. And I'm very happy to report, as you can see, there are no leeches all over this bag. And that means I've got myself a nice, healthy bag of fresh blackworm. That's not always the case. And what I mean by that is maybe once every 2 to 3 months, when this particular company gets to the bottom of the vat of their blackworm, I get so many leeches and it is so gross. And I just basically end up throwing out the whole bag. But that is a nice, clean bag. So today is a happy day in that respect. In this bag here, and there's 2 other bags that I've already put away, but in this bag here are blueberry snails. And we're going to put this on the floor because that was the only 2 things in there. So this week at the shop, there's going to be a total of 5 fish deliveries. I also took in some homebred angelfish, very large angelfish, and some frontosa from a private customer. But that being said, there's not too much in dry goods coming this week. I did a lot of refills on that. But we do have a bunch of fish deliveries that are still due in. This will be the last for today. Don't know if I have any brackish water fans, but that being said, excuse me, I have 2 or 3 brackish water tanks here at the shop. I've got a thing for blennies. These guys here are the dwarf monos, which is basically like a brackish water angelfish. They don't come in many colors. They're just silver and white, black stripes. They get orange dorsal fin. These guys are the dwarf monos. So in captivity, they're going to cap out around 3.5, 4 inches. They can get up to 6, but in my experience, I haven't seen them that large. But those guys are going to be going in with my zebra blennies. And I actually have purple spaghetti eels, but I can't sell them because they live in the sand. There's 5 of them, and they just come up for bloodworm, and they go right back into the sand. So it was a bad idea buying those and putting them in a fully scaped tank because they are now residents. In this bag here is leopard cactus pleco, and I ordered 8 of these guys. They're only running about 2.5 to maybe 3 inches. But that being said, these guys cap out at around 14, so they are beefy. But if you have a large tank, these guys are absolutely gorgeous. Oh, here's another one in this bag here. And the patterns on them. He's a little stressed out, so he doesn't have as much orange as I'd like for him to have, but maybe I'll throw some pictures up tomorrow of them because they really are a stunning pleco to have. Let's see. Ah, this here is a white seam pleco, also known as the Starlight pleco, the L183s. These guys are in the bushy nose family, so they're going to cap out around 5 inches. These guys came in at 3 to 3.5 inch, also homebred, so I'm quite pleased. I can actually see, yeah, I can see all the white spots on them. The seam on the dorsal isn't too bright right now, so a little stressed out, but great temperatures on the bag, so they've got plenty of time. These guys here are some, well, they're all down at the bottom, so hard to see, but these guys here are just red crystal shrimps. Uh, these guys are also homebred. So, and as far as the red crystals that I carry, well, I should say the Caradina shrimp that I carry here at the shop, I am not picky on my Caradinas as far as their parameters because I do little low end ones. I'm just being completely honest. All of the Caradina shrimp I sell here are in Neo parameters. I do use Brightwell Aquatics or Carib Sea Samurai soil just as my buffer in the tanks for all of my shrimp. But outside of that, I do not concern myself with TDS. I know that TDS is a big thing in shrimp land to talk about. And if I was doing high ends, like I sell Galaxies and a couple other different strains of Caradinas, but you know, it's if it was a $60 cur shrimp, fine and dandy, I would be on point with my TDS. I'd be on point with my pH being at 6.5 to maybe 6.8, even 6, depending on what the species is. But I don't necessarily concern myself with that when it comes to the types I have. And also they're not imported, they're homebred. I know, you know, who I'm using and what their parameters are. So that's all relevant as to how I keep the shrimp here in the shop. Next up, these guys are wild caught and they will be getting treated even though they came pre-treated, or at least that's what I'm told. So I can believe that, but I've had problems with these before, so I'm very hesitant on just putting them into a tank and trusting it. But these guys are the spotted splash tetras. So these guys are going to be going into a tank with nothing else so that I can pre-treat them and make sure that they don't develop any type of fungal or bacterial issues. That seems to be the most common thing with that particular species, is any type of fungus or bacteria. So I'm going to hit these guys with Canaplex, observe them. I also am going to feed them. I'm more of a pellet feeder here at the shop, and I also use Aquafunk's food. I mix it in with the products that I sell, both on behalf of my own name brand and some of the other brands that I sell here at the shop. But I do have some medicated flake that I'll be giving these guys for a while just to clean them out, make sure they're okay, and that they are going to be available for sale. So they're going to be on my website, but if you were to order them, I would not be putting them in a bag to give them to you until I'm ready. Sorry, that's how I am. Again, in the starlights, this appears to be a very healthy male starlight. He's got lots of little bushy little wormies on his face. So that being said, that's one male and one female on the starlights. And I know there's, I think, 4 or 5 up front. And then we got this last bag. And like I said, guys, some of these orders came in early. I did promise you guys that I was going to do an unboxing. So I did get some stuff put away, and I just wanted to save some stuff for you guys so you could see some of the things that we bring in. In this bag here, we also have more of the spotted splash tetras. In this bag here, oh, pandagars, little wiggle butts. I love my pandas. So we were running low on pandas, and this is one of the trusted sources for my pandagars. So I got another dozen to go with the 6 that I had left. great algae eater, and that's actually in the carp family. I don't know if everybody knew that or not, but that being said, that's where Pandagaras lie. Oh, we've been going through newts like water over here, but that being said, I've gone through about 25 of the Florida Peninsula newts. I was down to 2 left in my front tank, so I've now set up a new tank for them in the back room, and this is another 6 to go with the other newts that are in the shop, which include the Alpines and the Kaisers. So that's another 6 pack of those guys. And for the record, if you're interested in newts, the peninsulas really, you don't have to worry about their temps as much as you do with some of the other species. But if you're not running a heater on a tank and you even have, shrimp and guppies going on, you can still get yourself a Florida peninsula newt and you'd be shocked. They are blind as bats and you've got yourself a newt in the community tank. I would drop the water level though about an inch or two because I don't know if I would trust them 100% not to be stupid enough to get out. We also have some homebred Norman's lamp-eye killifish. It's not that they're rare, but it's very hit or miss when they're available and at least from good sources. So I haven't had those guys in about a month. I had 2 different types of lamp eyes. When I ran out, I was waiting for my good source to have them again. So those guys are back in stock. And then these are more lamp eyes. And then aside from that, that's all I left out to show you guys with this order. I did put, sorry for my hand in the way, I did put most of the other bags away. I will, my big old pleco in a way. So that is one of the Frontosa, actually 2 of the Frontosa that I haven't been able to put away yet. Now these guys were all bagged in live oxygen about 3 hours ago when the breeder dropped them off. So they're all doing well. Nobody, panicked that they're going to die because we're sitting here yapping. That being said, these are some of the angels that my breeder brought in for me. So I got to get those guys unbagged. And then there's some other random tanks that have some stuff in them that I need to take care of. I got to get back to doing a bunch of water changing. If you guys want to see down here are the Betta macrostoma. And they're definitely flaring and showing off and getting in fights with one another. But yeah, so technically I should get back to work. If anybody has any other questions, I can scroll through real quick. Hello, JP Jeffries. How are you? Who else do we have in here? Let's see. Wondering what all of these blocked messages are. Haha, that's going to be fun later. All right. If anybody has any questions, now would be the time. Aside from that, I think I'm getting ready to get out of here and get back to work because my butt's probably not going to be home until after 10. But let's see, there's 11 people in here. Oh, Funk, no worries. All right. So if anybody has any ideas for anything they would like me to talk about, there is a bunch of stuff that I'm going to do like actual videos on because I can easily be distracted and ramble during a live stream, as you can tell. So live streams probably aren't my best option to go with. But I'm feeling it out. Like I said, I'm not doing this as a popularity contest. I'm not doing this because I want likes or views or anything like that. I'm not even doing this to promote the shop. And to be honest with you, when it comes to haters, if anything, I am crucifying myself by telling you that you need to be accountable as a customer when you shop at a fish store. So I'm probably going to end up doing damage to myself with the store, but I'm confident in what I'm saying. And I'm honestly just trying to expand your minds, guys, when it comes to kind of, what your expectation bar is set at for us versus the expectation bar we have set at for you. There's a lot of fish tubers in the community that will yell at Petco's, yell at PetSmarts, talk down about stores, and they come in and, oh my God, there's a hose out on the floor, and oh, there's water all over the floor. And sometimes I got to admit, I get kind of annoyed hearing it because, yeah, we're working. Like I work 90 hours a week here at the shop. Not every day like can be totally open for the floor and me roll out the red carpet for you and cater to your every beck and call. I just want to express that this is a lot of hard work, and unless you are in this industry busting your behind, sometimes I think we get judged unfairly. And because I was a hobbyist for 20 years and I went to tons of different stores and saw how they operated before owning this, I can see both sides now. And I do want to come from a perspective of a store owner. I do want to come from a perspective of not just talking about all of the happy go lucky moments in this industry, because not all of it is peaches and cream. I've definitely done searches on YouTube for the horror stories of owning a fish store, and there's not a lot of them. And it's not because they don't exist. I think it's because a lot of people are they're afraid to talk about it because that's how they get haters, that's how they get bad reviews and so on and so forth. And then there's some people with an old school mentality that the customer is always right, and you know what, that's just such horse shit. I'm sorry, it really is. If you're in the service industry, then you know that the customer isn't always right. Your wife isn't always right, your husband's not always right, the dog's not always right, neither is the cat. So you as a customer setting the expectation bar really freaking high if you think you're always right. But yeah, so thanks for hanging out with me. This could have been a total disaster, and maybe it is. I don't know. I'll probably watch this or at least listen to myself ramble on the way home tonight. But I didn't do this to be a success. I didn't do it to be a failure either, but I did it for the fun of it. For those of you that know me personally, when I say I bust my butt, without getting upset, I really do. I haven't had a break in 4 years. And it's because I really love what I do. I take care of these animals. This place means the world to me. This year, I am going to try to actually take a real break, a mental health break, a life break. And it's kind of funny because I'm planning on going to Florida and going to fish stores and going to a fish farm that friends of mine own. And if I'm lucky, I'll be able to take Funk with me. Um, so I'm going to take a break, and I'm still going to do fish related stuff. But I've explored Florida in many different facets. So this is still going to be a very fun trip, but I've earned it and I need it. Like it or not, this is who I am. This is how my store runs. This is how my brain operates. The care of the animals is most important to me. And I really do want to spread the message to people that don't always trust what we're saying. And it's not because all of us are bad people. It's not because we're all in it for the money and we don't care. But you shouldn't want to take our word as bond, because if you really want to enjoy this hobby, take in all the good and the bad with it. And a lot of these YouTube people are fun. Some of them are dumb. Some of them will convince you of just the strangest things. And I was gullible because I didn't have wholesale lists. I didn't have transshipper lists. I didn't know the seasons for certain fish. But now that I know it, I do get sour sometimes. There's some YouTubers out there that they've got discount codes for certain stores, and they'll walk around saying, that you can't get this there and you can't get this there, and they're the only one importing and blah, 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 blah. And I've learned, again, from having this for 4 years, I know exactly what transshipper you're using. I know exactly where you got it. And then I can even tell you that your price point's too high. So I'm not coming for certain YouTubers. I'm never going to call people out by name either. I know that a lot of people that are in this stream are also people that are in other people's streams. And I respect every single YouTuber that's out there. There's certain YouTubers that some of you guys know that I don't associate with anymore. And that's my choice. I have my reasons, and I'm never going to share them or express them. I don't ever want this to be a drama stream. I made a comment in yesterday's video about 3D printing, and some assumptions were made about that company and who I might have been talking about, and whether that individual that made that comment was right or wrong, or was partially right, and maybe I'm talking about a couple other people as well. I'm not going to confirm or deny. And that's not just for liability purposes, because trust me, I don't need anybody suing me. And honestly, if you want to sue me, guess what? I'll give you the keys to this. You can have it. My car's paid off, but it's also got 126,000 miles on it. So you're welcome. So I'm not going to give people a reason to sue me or claim defamation or anything to that effect. I'm not that stupid. But I am going to speak freely, and I'm going to tell you why I have the opinions on certain things that I have. But I hope that you appreciate those opinions. I hope that even if you disagree with those opinions, that we can agree to disagree, because there's going to be videos where I am venting and ranting, but I'm going to try to elaborate as to why I have that feeling. Live stream might not be for me. I get it. I totally rambled now for what seems to be 86 minutes. And apparently, I am definitely not getting work done. But I do want to say thank you very much to what appears to be the 12 people that came out. It actually does mean a lot to me. And I hope you guys enjoyed checking out the store. And yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at with it. Unless there's anything anybody wants to see in the shop, needs another tour, wants to tell me this was the worst thing they ever viewed. No, we're good. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for joining me. I hope you guys have a great week. Everybody stay safe. And if you need me, you know where to find me. I pretty much live at my store. That's Elite Menagerie Habitats. And I'm on YouTube. I'm on Facebook. I'm on pretty much every social media channel that I can't stand using. But talk to you guys later. Check it out. And have a great week. Bye bye.